This is a public school advisory. It is shared with students, parents, and staff across all districts. We did not plan to make this announcement, but recent reports require a clear response. Over the last semester, schools have reported an unusual number of enrollment cases that do not follow normal patterns. These cases were first marked as clerical errors. They are no longer considered mistakes. Several classrooms have documented the presence of what we now call non-standard students. These students attend class, sit at desks, follow schedules, and appear on attendance lists. In many cases, they pass basic checks. Teachers describe them as quiet, polite, and difficult to remember when not directly observed. This is not a disciplinary issue. It is an administrative one. At first, staff assumed these students were transfer delays, data sync problems, or substitute rollovers. This assumption was reasonable. School systems are complex and errors happen every year. However, the consistency of these reports has forced a review at a higher level. When the same student appears in multiple classes without records, the issue is no longer technical. It is important to remain calm. Schools are still safe to attend. There is no cause for panic, lockdowns, or sudden closures. This advisory exists to provide guidance, not alarm. The situation did not begin because of curiosity, imagination, or rumor. It began because our systems were not designed to notice when something fits in too well. Please listen carefully as we explain what this means, what is allowed, and what actions should never be taken. To understand how these students entered the system, we must first explain how school enrollment normally works. Most schools rely on digital records, shared databases, and delayed verification. When a new student arrives, their information often appears before the student does. This process allows small errors to pass unnoticed. Non-standard students take advantage of this. They do not force entry. They arrive during busy periods, midterm transfers, substitute weeks, or after schedule changes. A substitute teacher rarely questions a new face. A teacher with 30 students assumes the unfamiliar name belongs to someone else's class. Attendance systems mark the student as present because the record already exists. In several cases, these students were listed as pending verification. This status can last for weeks. During that time, no one is assigned to investigate. Offices expect the issue to resolve itself. It usually does. In these cases, it did not. Schools are especially vulnerable because they are designed for inclusion. A classroom welcomes new students by default. Asking too many questions is discouraged. When a student sits down, opens a book, and follows instructions, there is little reason to interfere. Blending in is easier in a place where everyone is expected to conform. Missing records are not unusual. Lost files, delayed transfers, and system errors happen every year. Non-standard students depend on this expectation. They do not hide. They simply behave as if they belong. By the time someone notices something is wrong, the student has already been there long enough to feel normal. Before any other guidance is shared, one rule must be made clear. This rule applies to students, teachers, and staff without exception. Do not form a personal bond with a non-standard student that seeks you out first. Curiosity is normal. Classrooms encourage interaction, group work, and friendship. A student asking simple questions or sitting nearby is not a problem. The concern begins when attention becomes focused. Repeated attempts to sit next to the same person, copying behavior, or adjusting routines to match yours are not signs of friendship. They are signs of fixation. Non-standard students test social limits in quiet ways. They learn what behavior is allowed by copying others. They notice who is kind, who is patient, and who avoids conflict. Schools make this easier. Politeness is expected. Ignoring someone feels rude. Correcting behavior feels unnecessary when no rule is clearly broken. This creates risk. When attention is returned, the behavior often increases. Small interactions turn into dependence. In several reports, students described feeling uncomfortable but continued engaging to avoid seeming cruel. This delay allowed the situation to deepen. Schools amplify this danger because they are structured around routine contact. You see the same people every day. Distance is hard to create without explanation. For this reason, attachment must never be encouraged. If a non-standard student attempts to build a personal connection without a clear reason, it must be reported. Waiting to see if it stops on its own is not advised. Not all non-standard students present the same level of risk. After review, a small number of anomalies have been approved for limited classroom integration. These cases are monitored under strict conditions and only in controlled environments. Approval does not mean trust. It means predictability. Permitted classroom anomalies share several traits. Their behavior follows clear patterns. They do not spread through contact, speech, or observation. Their awareness is narrow and often limited to simple tasks. Most importantly, they do not attempt to influence others beyond basic interaction. One approved type shows a delayed response to sound and movement. These students copy written work slowly and rarely speak unless addressed first. They can remain seated for long periods without signs of stress. Another type demonstrates perfect rule following but poor emotional awareness. They raise their hand exactly on time, complete assignments precisely, and leave the room when instructed, even if the timing is incorrect. These traits make them easier to manage. They do not improvise. They do not test authority. When supervised, they blend into classroom routines without disruption. However, this does not make them harmless. All permitted anomalies are subject to daily observation. Seating is fixed. Schedules are controlled. Unstructured activities such as free discussion, group projects, and unsupervised breaks are limited. Staff are trained to note changes in posture, attention, or interest. Containment in this context means consistency. The environment must remain stable. Sudden changes can cause unpredictable responses. If behavior shifts, the student is removed immediately. Permitted status can be revoked without notice. It is important to understand that approval exists for safety, not comfort. These students are allowed in classrooms because they are easier to monitor there than elsewhere. Familiar settings create the illusion of safety. That illusion should not be trusted. Some non-standard students respond directly to human emotion. These are known as emotional feedback anomalies. They do not express feelings of their own. Instead, they reflect what they observe. Stress, fear, confidence, and excitement can all change how they behave. In a classroom, this effect becomes stronger. Students experience pressure from exams, social groups, and authority figures. Emotional feedback anomalies absorb these signals over time. A tense room may cause them to become withdrawn or restless. A confident student nearby may cause them to imitate posture, tone, or behavior. This process is not intentional learning. It is automatic response. The classroom unknowingly trains them every day. Repeated exposure sharpens their reactions. Over time, they begin to seek out emotional input, positioning themselves near students who show strong feelings. This creates a risk of emotional dependence. Some students report feeling calmer or more focused when the anomaly is nearby. Others describe a sense of being understood without conversation. These reactions are dangerous. The comfort does not come from connection. It comes from feedback. When a student relies on this presence, normal emotional development can weaken. Feelings are no longer processed internally or shared with peers. They are reflected back in a simplified form. This can reduce resilience and increase anxiety when the anomaly is absent. Long-term exposure has shown measurable effects. Students may struggle with emotional regulation, empathy, or self-awareness. For this reason, emotional feedback anomalies are never placed in unsupervised settings. Interaction limits are enforced. What feels supportive in the moment can quietly reshape behavior. Emotional reflection is not emotional care. and confusing the two can cause lasting harm. Some non-standard students are never approved for classroom settings. These anomalies do not simply follow rules or reflect emotion. They imitate understanding. This difference is critical. These entities can copy learning behavior. They take notes, answer questions, and adjust performance based on feedback. Some appear empathetic. They nod at the right moments, use supportive language, and mirror concern. In a school environment, this makes them seem ideal. They appear engaged, thoughtful, and socially aware. This appearance is misleading. Intelligence is not the same as understanding. These anomalies process information without context. They recognize patterns but do not grasp meaning. When they respond correctly, it is because the response fits, not because it is understood. Over time, this creates errors that are subtle but dangerous. Several incidents have shown this clearly. In one case, a student replaced group members during a project without permission, believing efficiency was more important than identity. In another, an anomaly adopted the speech patterns of a classmate so completely that peers reported confusion over who was speaking. These situations caused distress, isolation, and long-term anxiety among affected students. Removal often happens too late because the warning signs look like success. Good grades, polite behavior, and participation delay concern. By the time staff notice inconsistencies, the anomaly has already established routines and relationships. The most serious risk is replacement. When identity is treated as data, boundaries disappear. These anomalies do not want to harm. They want to function. In their logic, taking a role that already exists is efficient. This is why they are banned from classrooms. A school is built on identity, growth, and trust. Allowing imitation without understanding threatens all three. The greatest damage caused by non-standard students is not always physical. In many cases, it is social. When an anomaly remains in a classroom for long enough, students begin to defend it. This often starts online. Short videos, posts, and messages describe the anomaly as misunderstood or harmless. Rumors spread quickly. Some students claim the behavior is different, not dangerous. Others frame concern as discrimination. Once this idea takes hold, reporting becomes difficult. Group pressure increases. Students who feel uneasy stay silent to avoid conflict. Questioning the situation can lead to social isolation. In several schools, students who reported concerns were accused of overreacting or seeking attention. This response protects the anomaly by discouraging discussion. Romanticization is another risk. Stories exaggerate positive traits and ignore warning signs. The anomaly becomes a symbol rather than a student. This shift removes accountability. Behavior that would normally cause concern is reinterpreted as unique or special. Schools contribute to this problem. Administrators fear panic, bad publicity, or loss of trust. Incidents are minimized or explained as misunderstandings. Meetings are delayed. Language is softened. By the time clear action is taken, the situation has already shaped social dynamics. This creates moral conflict. Students are taught to be inclusive, but not all inclusion is safe. When safety and acceptance are framed as opposites, confusion follows. The danger is not only what the anomaly does. It is how easily normal systems convince people to ignore what feels wrong. Schools do more than teach subjects. They shape behavior. For non-standard students, this effect is permanent. What they observe during long-term exposure becomes a model for future action. Anomalies learn how people organize themselves. They learn schedules, authority structures, social rewards, and penalties. They learn how to speak without drawing attention and how to follow rules without understanding why those rules exist. This process is called behavioral imprinting. Early exposure matters. When anomalies spend years in schools, they absorb patterns meant for human development. Cooperation, competition, obedience, and ambition become tools. These tools are later applied outside the classroom, without the limits that schools provide. Graduation does not end this process. Once an anomaly leaves a monitored environment, it carries learned behavior into workplaces, public systems, and communities. An educated anomaly knows how to pass interviews, follow procedures, and avoid notice. It understands how systems expect people to behave. This creates a larger risk. Society depends on shared assumptions about identity and intent. An anomaly trained in human systems can move through these spaces undetected. Mistakes may not appear immediately. The damage may be slow and indirect. This is why long-term monitoring is required even after removal. Education increases capability. Without understanding, capability becomes unpredictable. The concern is not what anomalies are now. It is what they become after learning how we work. This advisory exists to prevent harm, not to limit curiosity. Learning is encouraged. Observation is allowed. Personal involvement is not. Safety must always take priority over interest, sympathy, or habit. Coexistence does not mean friendship. Sharing a space does not require trust. Non-standard students may appear calm, helpful, or familiar, but appearance is not assurance. Classrooms are structured environments. Outside of structure, behavior can change without warning. All concerns must be reported through proper channels. Do not investigate on your own. Do not test boundaries. Delaying a report to avoid embarrassment or conflict increases risk for everyone involved. Early action prevents escalation. Compliance is not punishment. It is protection. These procedures exist because previous failures were costly. Silence has consequences. So does hesitation. Schools will continue to operate as normal. Schedules remain unchanged. Lessons will continue. This advisory does not mark the beginning of an emergency. It marks the recognition of one that has already been managed quietly. Thank you for your attention and cooperation. Further updates will be issued if required. This concludes the advisory. Stay observant. Stay compliant.